Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. You might be saying if you're a regular, wow, everything looks different. There are a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm home for the holidays, so the background is going to look like this for a couple of weeks. And two, I got a brand new computer, so hopefully the audio and video quality are the best they've ever been. If they're not, leave some suggestions in the comment section below because I'm still tweaking some of the settings. But regardless, we've got a lot of hoops to talk about, so make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and start off with Sixers versus Pistons, which, to be honest, was a bit of a blowout. The Sixers win by 20 points. They were led by Joel Embiid, who had 22, 10, and 6. The Pistons have no answer for him, nor do they have one for James Harden, who scored 12 of his 15 points in the first quarter, and by that time, the game basically got away from them because once the Pistons go down by double digits, it's pretty hard for them to come back without their lead guard in Cade Cunningham, who once again is going to miss the entire season, which really sucks. Tobias Harris had 17 points. You got 12, 9, and 3 from D'Anthony Melton, and the Sixers are now on a roll. They've won 6 straight games, which is funny considering their name, and they've been winning those games consistently by double digits. Only one of their W's has come by single digits. They're winning by an average of 14 points per game. So even though it hasn't been the toughest stretch, they're dominating teams left and right, and this is still without Tyrese Maxey, who hasn't played since the beginning of the season. He's only played 15 out of their 30 games, as has James Harden, and despite that, alongside Joel Embiid missing a third of the season, they're sitting at 18-12. They're only a few games back of the one-seeded Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks, who both lost tonight, so the Sixers were able to gain some ground in that department. They're still in contention to get a home court advantage spot in the East. They still look pretty good, and I know a lot of people are out on the Philadelphia 76ers for a number of reasons, but I am still one of their believers. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this video is going to curse them, and they're going to end up falling a few spots in the standings or suffer another injury, but at least on paper, I like this squad a lot, and I kind of want to reiterate why I still believe in them. Now, of course, when you talk about Philadelphia, you have to start with Joel Embiid, who's one of the best players in the league. Right now, he's leading the entire NBA in scoring at 33 points per game while shooting 53% from the field and 35.3% from deep, which are amazing numbers. For a big man, 53% isn't anything crazy, but Joel Embiid doesn't play like a typical big man. He operates more like a mid-range assassin, a guard, a forward type. In fact, he takes 40% of all of his jumpers from the mid-range area. It's impressive that he shoots them at that volume and is still knocking down that high percentage of his looks. He only shoots about 20% of his looks around the basket, which you don't expect typically from a big man. So he has a very different shot profile from your typical center, and yet he knocks them down highly efficiently. He's a good three-point shooter. You know he can get to the free throw line, and I know a lot of y'all are going to have some beef with him, and I know a lot of people hate Joel Embiid specifically because of the free throw thing, and while, it's not the most entertaining basketball, it still is a great way to generate consistent offense. All the greatest scorers in league history were able to get to the free throw line. If your shot's not falling, you need an easy way to still get points and help your squad, and it can put you in a rhythm. I saw it the other day. I'm going to put OKC in this as I usually do, where Shea started the game, I believe it was 2 for 10 or 2 for 12, and by the end of it, he shot just under 50% because he consistently got to the free throw line to allow him to build that rhythm to where he was knocking down the shots he typically does. It's important for high-level scorers. So as much as you may not like Joel Embiid, he's one of the most dominant offensive centers we have ever seen in the history of the game, leading the league in scoring, doing it efficiently, not in the typical way you see a center dominate, but dominating all the same. And then defensively, he is an incredible defender as well. Super mobile for a big. He can block shots, contest things around the rim. He gets out on closeouts. Joel Embiid does a bit of everything defensively. He's always going to be in all defensive talks throughout the year, and this year is no exception to that rule. When he gets the ball, it's basically an automatic double team for the opposing squad, but it helps Philly out that this year they're a great three-point shooting team. They're 4th in the league at shooting threes on 38.2% from deep. That is an incredible mark. If you can get that consistently around Joel Embiid, it's going to be hard to not win a ton of games. And Embiid himself has gotten better and better at picking apart double teams, timing the pass just perfectly to make sure he takes advantage of the guy leaving his man. He's continuously improving as a playmaker, and the shooters aren't letting him down when they get the ball. And really, to just summarize things, when you have a center that can go out and drop a near 60-point quadruple double like Embiid did against the Utah Jazz a few weeks ago, you're in a pretty good spot. He also has a near perfect pick and roll partner in James Harden, who given hasn't been as good as I thought he would be this season. Part of that is that he's coming off of that injury still and working his way back into shape. Those first few games of the year, he looked like the James Harden of old, and so maybe he'll somewhat get back to that form, but for right now, he's still averaging low 20s in points, but he's averaging double-digit assists. Him and Embiid are the most dangerous pick and roll duo in the entire NBA. I don't have numbers to back that up. I just feel like every time they run it, they get some great look, even if it doesn't end up falling. It is consistently consistently generating high-level offense. I still don't know why they just don't spam that over and over again, but I'm not Doc Rivers, who we will talk about a bit later, but having a playmaker like that for Joel Embiid, as well as these great shooters, goes a long way towards their success, and even if James Harden isn't the James Harden of old, he's still a really good player. Then you have his backcourt partner in Tyrese Maxey, who has not played since the early going of the season. He should be coming back soon after suffering a foot injury like it felt like the whole Sixers squad did, but when he was playing, he was having a near all-star caliber season, averaging about 23 points per game. He was shooting 42.2% from deep. He was attacking the basket at a high level, hitting floaters, the typical stuff you see with Tyrese Maxey, and him and Harden form one of the best offensive backcourts in the entire league. Now, defense is a concern when the two of them are playing alongside each other, as neither of them are really stoppers, but the way that you get offense out of those two guys, you can probably make up for it elsewhere. Then I want to give some love to Tobias Harris, who I feel like because of his big contract continues to fly under the radar. He's still a really solid player. Sure, he doesn't deserve that max, but just because he's overpaid doesn't mean that he's overrated. He's averaging about 17 points per game, and he's shooting 42% from deep, a big reason why the Sixers have been so effective from the three-point line. He's shooting over 50% from deep over the month of December. He's been incredible, and once again is one of the most under the radar pieces on this entire team, despite him having a max contract, because I think that does make him get a lot more hate than he deserves. Then there's De'Anthony Melton, who has been one of the single best free agent pickups of this entire season. I love the move when they made it in the offseason, and I love it even more now seeing him in action. He's been a solid playmaker for them, a great defender, and he's knocked down a lot of threes. Another example of great perimeter shooting on the roster, and not having James Harden or Tyrese Maxey for a good portion of the season, Melton has been asked to start a lot of games and step up in a big way, and he's done exactly that, providing what the Sixers are looking for in any type of backup guard, one of the best guards to have off the bench in the entire NBA once Maxey and Harden get back. So shout to De'Anthony Melton, he deserves a ton of love, been one of my favorite role players in the NBA over the course of this season. Then around these guys, you have some high level shooters like George Niang, who's shooting 42% from deep, Shake Milton, who's shooting 37% from deep, and Dan Wildhouse Jr., who I didn't even realize he was shooting this well despite watching him. He's shooting 36.7% from deep. Basically everybody on this roster is shooting 35% or better from three, and when you have all these shooters around Joel Embiid and James Harden, combined with the fact that right now they're the second best defense in the NBA, that's a recipe for a lot of success. I like this Sixers roster a lot, and I feel like the way that they've turned things around from the way their season started is flying super under the radar. I believe that by the playoffs, if they can stay healthy, the Sixers will be right there in the conversation for the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Maybe I'm falling for them once again, as I have year after year, but I just feel like this team is so solid and sound on paper. That is, there are still some concerns. I don't love their backup big situation. I would love for them to acquire another guy there, or a wing player. You've got Matisse Thybulle, who plays sometimes, but his offense is non-existent, and even though he's solid defensively, he makes a lot of mistakes. I feel like at the end of every close game, if he's in for defense, he'll manage to foul a three-point shooter somehow. You've got Furkan Korkmaz, who can kind of shoot, or at least that's what he's supposed to do, but he's shooting like 33% from deep, so not exactly fit in that role. They could really use a solid 3-and-D guy off the bench at the wing spot, a better backup 4 or a 5, and maybe even a starting 4 if you really want to go that route and move PJ Tucker to the bench, although once again he's been pretty good in his role. You also have the issues of the fact that you're coached by Doc Rivers, and give Doc Rivers credit, he was really good over the stretch where they were missing Embiid, Maxey, and Harden. They won more games than they were supposed to when those three guys were out, but I still don't trust him as a playoff coach. I feel like he just makes too many mistakes, commits too much to his ways, and doesn't make the necessary adjustments that you need. So we'll see once again with Doc Rivers when we get to the playoffs. And also injuries, you know, I'm saying on paper, I like the idea of this roster, but injuries are a real factor for them. James Harden's older, and he's been really hurt over these past few years, and he's playing 38 minutes a game, which is super concerning. You definitely want to see that number go down over the course of the year, so hopefully that is the case. Joel Embiid, we've seen him deal with a lot of injuries like I talked about at the beginning of the video. Over the playoffs, it always seems like he gets really banged up, and by the second round, he's hardly healthy. Tyrese Maxey is now coming back from this injury, but he's young, and he's been relatively healthy over the course of his career, so hopefully this is just a one-off thing. It's definitely a concern for the Sixers, the injuries, the coaching, and I still think there are a few holes on the roster, but I think they'll address at least the holes on the roster. The injuries and, Doc Rivers are yet to be determined what happens with those, but overall, I still like the Sixers. I still believe in them and think that they are a championship caliber team once they get healthy and once they really get things rolling, as they've started to do as of late. In some other league news, we had the Raptors face off against the New York Knicks, which is funny because I made a video on the Knicks today and they end up losing, blowing their win streak at 8 games. You know, the cone curse strikes once again. I apologize, Knicks fans, but there wasn't really anything they could do because Pascal Siakam was a monster. He had 52 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, easily the best individual performance of his entire career, and his value continues to rise for a potential trade, or if they want to hold on to him, I completely understand, because right now he's one of the 15 best players in the entire association. As for the Knicks, RJ Barrett and Julius Randle each had 30 pieces, but it was kind of a rough run from Jalen Brunson, who shot just 3 of 14 on the night, one of his rougher performances of the year, and once again, it's just funny that their streak ends the day I make a video on them. Next up, we have Pacers versus Celtics, where Indiana got the win, led by Tyrese Haliburton, who had 33 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 dimes. Marcus Smart really could have been used in this matchup. He did not play to give some point of attack defense on Tyrese Haliburton and force other guys to beat them, but just wasn't the case. And it felt like Boston came into this one weirdly asleep, I guess. It felt like they were just kind of going through the motions to the point where they were down by 28 points at halftime, and all of a sudden they woke up and they did bring this thing all the way back to a 5-point game with just a few minutes left. But then Tyrese hits a 3, Miles Turner gets an and 1 off a Tyrese dime, and all of a sudden the deficit's back to 10 with like 2 minutes to go. They end up fighting back a little bit, but it's just too little too late. I don't know what happened in that first half, and you know, Boston has now lost 5 out of their last 6 matchups, so I don't understand why they seem kind of complacent. A lot of their shooters have been coming back down to earth. Their offense, which was once historically great to begin the year, is now been the worst in the league over the month of December, or at least one of the worst ones. I'm not quite sure if it still is the bottom, but either way, that's a horrible drop off, and this is kind of what I expected at the beginning of the year. Missing Robert Williams with Joe Mazzulla coming in as a new head coach, I thought they would really struggle to begin the year, but as it went on, they would figure things out. Not the reverse, where they begin the year super strong, and now in this middle section, they're really struggling against some, you know, Indiana's a solid team, but they've lost back-to-back games to the Magic, for example. It's just not been looking good for Boston. I think they will turn things around, but if it's not soon, they could start to drop in the standings. Next up, we've got Cavs versus Bucks, with Cleveland getting the win over Milwaukee, led by their backcourt, who combined for 59 points. And I also real quick want to give a shout to Jared Allen, who I feel like gets posterized basically every single night that he plays, but he consistently still jumps whenever someone tries to dunk on him, and regardless of how many times he gets baptized and posted on Twitter, he's going to continue to jump, and I really respect that from a rim protector. And Giannis was the one doing the baptizing. He dropped 45 points, 14 boards, but it didn't matter much. Nobody else was really there to help him. Jrue Holiday had just 9 points, no Chris Middleton in this game, and Cleveland, despite being the #1 defense, got eviscerated by the Greek Freak. However, the rest of the Bucks were stifled. The final game I want to go into is Charlotte versus LA, and this is purely because the Clippers absolutely destroyed them, and they flexed their depth. They had 7 guys that scored in double digits. They're starting to find their rhythm as a squad, and now they're just 1.5 games back of the 1 seed, despite dealing with injuries to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and a lot of role players sitting out games here and there. It's been impressive what they've done. This is what I expected from the Clippers coming into the season when I predicted them to win the finals. I thought the Clippers were going to have to rest guys here and there, but they would still be really good due to their depth, and they started super slow at the beginning of the year, but now they've kind of figured things out. Their role players are playing better and better. Kawhi Leonard is playing more consistently as of late. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy, same with Paul George, but if the Clippers continue to roll like this, they're one of the scariest teams in the NBA, a league that is currently really wide open and doesn't exactly have a juggernaut. Maybe the Clippers are going to fill that space. As for Charlotte, before the season, I made a video talking about how they were a mess, and I could see them being one of, if not the single worst team in the Eastern Conference this season. A lot of people were mad about that, Hornets fans specifically. Here they are, tied for the bottom of the Eastern Conference. I know LaMelo Ball has been hurt for a lot of the season, but I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. This is just not a good roster. LaMelo's been a bright spot when he has played. He had a 25, 11, and 12 triple-double in tonight's game, but not nearly enough. They just don't have the supporting pieces, and I'm still waiting for them to trade a lot of their veterans and just go for Victor Wembanyama. To quickly recap the rest of the games, the Kings beat the Lakers, led by Sabonis, who had 13, 21, and 12. They're really good. Shout out to them, lighting the beam once again. Paolo had 23 and 13 in a win over the Rockets. The Thunder beat the Blazers for the 2nd time in a row, led by none other than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The Mavs took down the Wolves with Luka having a near triple-double. The Bulls beat the Hawks on an Ayo Dosunmu game winner right at the buzzer, and the Nets dropped 91 points on the Warriors in the first half, setting a franchise record, and beat them by 30 at the end of the game. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. Comment down below, do you agree with me that the Sixers will be contenders and fighting for the title by the time the playoffs roll around, if they can get healthy? Of course, that is always a caveat with Philadelphia. And also comment down below your biggest takeaways from tonight's games. There were a lot of blowouts, and I think we've learned a lot of things about teams at this point. So let me know how you're feeling about your squad about 30 games in. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.